on the hot seat. Imagine charting a path in a career that puts you right on the map in a country that is crying for better representation in the judiciary. But it wasn't always your plan. You found yourself there by accident. But are things always as they seem? Should we always believe what we see when people come out guns blazing on social media? We're talking to the Grand Mullah himself on the hot seat. This is Senior Counsel Ahmed Nassir Abdullahi. Listen to his story. Thank you so much, Wakili, for joining us on the hot seat.
My pleasure.
This, again, as I keep saying, is a platform where we tell your story. So we want to hear it today from you in your own words, and I want to take you back to the very beginning. You were born and raised in Mandera?
Yes. I was born and raised in Mandera. I went to a school called Mandera DEP for my primary school. Then I went to Mandera Secondary School for my secondary school. Then I went to Nairobi School for my high school, as they used to call it that time, Form 5, Form 6.
Were they still calling it Patch then?
Yes, it's Patch, with an exclamation mark. Yes, then I went to Nairobi University for my undergrad, for my first degree in law. I went to the King's School of Law after that. Then I went to Cornell University in upstate New York for my master's. So I came back to Kenya, started a law firm, practiced, taught law for 12 years before I left. That's part of my life.
That's part of your life.
Yes.
We'll come back to that step by step. I want to take you back to your upbringing. How was that like? At some point I saw that you had even worked in your father's shop, lucrative business at the time. How was growing up in Mandera like?
Yes, I think growing up in Mandera during that time was very exciting, small rural town. But Mandera is a place where three borders meet, There is the Ethiopian border, there is the Somali border, and the Kenyan border. So it's an intersection of three countries. So that makes it very dynamic, a lot of business, a lot of, cultural interchanges between. Of course, all the three towns are inhabited by Somalis. But, the Ethiopian Somalis on that side, Somalis on this side, and Kenyan Somalis on that side. So that is the time when my life in Mandera doing it. But it was exciting. It was also very volatile because, it was in the 80s and 70s when Ethiopia and Somalia, used to have, there was a lot of, hostility between them, open wars. And Mandera used to always be caught, in the crossfires.
Before the cross from Mandera to Nairobi School, or
Yes.
Patch as we call it, how would you describe your upbringing? Was it strict? Your parents, your family, how was that like? Was it just easy?
No. I tell my kids, that when they complain about the homework, if you look at my life, a typical child in Mandera in the 70s and 80s, your life starts at 5 in the morning. You have to go to Duxi, the Quranic school. So you go to the Quranic school, between 5 and 7. So you have to finish. Then at 7 you go to the normal primary school. Then when you finish at 4, you go now to the madrasa, which is another Islamic school. You go there between 5 and 7. Then at 7, you come back to the Quranic school. So it was, a child, we used to have like maybe 14 hours of classes of different types, from the Quranic school to the normal school to the madrasa. So it was, of course you will squeeze in a football game here and there, but it was fairly packed up for, in terms of, different kind of learning. Yes.
Had you already developed a love for reading and for books?
Not really. I was a very naughty child. Yes. If you ask my teachers and my classmates, I was not an easy child.
At all?
Yes.
How so? Any particular incident you remember?
A lot of things.
One that stands out.
No, I was against, as a child, I was against systems, I was not, I was not the kind of child who will become, or a student who becomes, a class prefect or a school prefect. I was on the other side.
Wale wa noisemakers list.
Yes, kabisa.
Wakuwekwa kwa parade hapo mbele all the time?
Every time, yes.
Really?
Yes, I was that type.
Is there anything that looking back now, you would say from before you came to Nairobi school would have charted the path that you took later on in life?
No, not really. I mean, I think, my larger family was, my uncle was he was an Islamic scholar, well known in the region. A man with a lot of, who shaped the whole family, not just me, it's my cousins, the larger family. So he's the one who really indoctrinated us into, the need to excel in schools or in madrasa. And that's why when we came to the university, our family, we were a big family. And when we came to the university, we were like about 5, 6, 7 from one family, which was unheard of that time in northern Kenya. Yes.
But before university, how was high school life for you? High school, I think for a lot of people, was very different from what they saw in primary school. Now you're a teenager, you're getting into this kind of world. How was that like for you?
Nairobi school is very different from normal schools in the sense that it gives you a lot of freedom. I mean, there's no controls. I remember I could go out every weekend if you want. When you are in high school, it was like, there was, you chart your course. You attend classes if you want. I used to have a famous teacher who taught us European history. And I never attended her class, actually, because I thought she used to, I'm sorry to say, but I thought she added no value. So I made a decision not to attend the class. So I never attended.
You never got caught?
I never. The school never minds really. That time when you are in Form 5, Form 6, you are a responsible man. So she used to. She used to teach us European history, paper 1, and frankly, I never attended the class, Form 5, Form 6. So when the exam came, I got a distinction 1, and she used to tell guys, Ahmed, this class, she said, is not necessary. Ahmed never attended class here, so there's no need to. So Nairobi school was a fun place in the sense that a lot of freedoms. We used to have, I used to stay in a house called Masebet House, very famous house. And we used to have an amazing house master who used to chart, people's career, very involving, called Kinywa. No, Kanyi, sorry, I'm sorry, Kanyi. But it was, it's also a place that used to open, your mind in terms of, your career, in terms of what's happening in the country. And I used to do literature, and there was a teacher who used to teach us paper 1 called, I think, Poetry and Critical Appreciation. And very harsh teacher in my view. Then suddenly one day the police came for him during those times of 85, 86. Then we realized, I think he was the police used to say he was a member of Kenya. So suddenly when we were expecting from class, when the police came, he just sneaked out. And what we had is that he crossed the border to Tanzania. I think that's the last time we heard of him. So,
wow.
Nairobi school was a very interesting place. Yes.
All right. And then you get into the University of Nairobi. What inspires you to take up the path of law?
I tell guys, I had no idea what law is.
Really?
Yes. When I was in Mandera primary school, we used to come once in a while to see the court system, because it used to be very interesting. But then Northeastern, because of the legal regime that was there at that time, the courts were not manned by normal magistrates. The courts were manned by either the DO or the DC himself. So the DC will be, running the district. But again, he sits as a judge, although he has no legal training. So apart from that, I've never had any idea what law is. I have never interacted with a lawyer in my life up to that point. When I was in Form 6 one night, when we were filling our career forms, our housemaster came and asked us, what are you guys doing? We were 6 guys in the house, 6, 7 guys. So everybody was saying, I want to do engineering, some law. So me, I said I want to do government, Bachelor of Arts in Government. So my first choice was Bachelor of Arts in Government. Second choice, I put it Bachelor of Arts in Government. Third choice, I put in Bachelor of Arts in Government. So Kanye said, no. He got a pen from the guy who was next to me, then he cancelled. Then he wrote LLB. That's how I became a lawyer.
Wow.
Yes.
Interesting. So it wasn't something that you had actually envisioned in your head all this time?
No, I had no idea what being a lawyer entailed.
But then moving forward, you have come to really rise in the legal fraternity. Looking back, do you think this was the right choice for you, or would you...
It's destiny, you know, really.
else?
I mean, it's destiny. I mean, it was God's will. Yes.
All right. So let's go back again to your rise again. And I say rise because you're one of the notable legal minds that we have in this country. It's, of course, must have been no mean feat. What kind of hurdles would you say you faced in that journey? You
know, when I was admitted on March 18th, 1993, yes, and I decided not to work for anybody from day one. I never applied for a job. There's a cousin of mine who had an office in a standard building, 3 rooms. So I told him, you know, give me 1 room. So they gave me just a 1 room. The office wasn't that active, but they told me, this is your room. 1 month was free, the first month. They didn't charge me anything. The second month, they said I must pay my share of the rent. So that's how we started law. I mean, just 1 room. I had the keys. If people come, I used to see. If nobody comes, I used to lock. I was my secretary. I was everything. So that's how we started law. But the good thing is that even during the first 2 months, I could make more than my classmates who are working with lawyers. So that's how I started practice in a standard building. Started for 3-4 years. Then I got a partner called Abdikadir, who is a former MP for Mandera North. The farm grew big. We moved it to 500 radius to Prudential. Then we moved to Commercial Bank of Africa. This is our 4th office since we started about 27 years ago. Yes. And
in this period, you have been deemed as, I'd say, one of the priciest lawyers ever. Is this something that is by design, or how does that work? Do you feel yourself that you're one of the priciest lawyers that we can get in the country? You know, one of the guys I used to admire most when I was at the Kenya School of Law was Mullah Kilonzo. He taught us a course called Professional Ethics. I mean, Mullah in 1991-92 was, you know, at the epitome of his career. You know, the president's lawyer. I mean, very flamboyant, very good lawyer. I think well connected in more than one ways. So, I mean, he had time to teach us, and I mean, he will, and that is you know, he will tell us a lot of very interesting things. And one of the things he used to tell us is that the more you charge the client in fees, the more they love you. Yes. How is that? Yes. They say, he said he started his practice in Machakos, and then when he started his office in Nairobi, he used to charge like 10-15 times what Nairobi lawyers charge. And he says it's when he started charging expensively that, you know, people just came to him. They love. I think it's a human nature that people like expensive things. Yes. I mean, I tell, when I was chairman of Law Society, and when people used to come to me and complain, you know, a lawyer, I gave him a brief, he has done this, he has spoiled my work. I used to tell them, lawyers are brands. If you buy a Toyota Corolla, don't expect it to work like a Mercedes-Benz. Yes. If you buy a shirt of 50 shillings, you get value for 50 shillings. If you buy a shirt of 1,000, you get a value for 1,000. Lawyers are like that. I mean, the same work. There's a lawyer who will charge you 100,000. Another lawyer will charge you 10 million shillings. And the client can afford both. So when it's psychological also. When you pay a lawyer 10 million shillings, I mean, there's a lot of pride in the client that, you know, my lawyer is an expensive lawyer. He charges me 10 million shillings. But what if I'm just the common Wanjiko and I really just want your services and I can't afford it? No. We do in this office, we do a lot of work free. Pro bono. Yes, but I tell guys, when I do work free, there's another guy who's paying for it. Yes. So you have to know where you stand. There are many people we do for free. There are guys we charge very, very easy. There's a guy we charge medium. There are guys we charge very expensively because they can afford. So
It depends on your station in life. Yes.
All right. Let's talk about your tenure as the chair of the LSK. How was that? What kind of impact do you feel that you left there? And compared to how it is operating now, what kind of disconnect, if as it were, would you say there is? Is there anything, if you were asked to go back and help them, would you change?
Yes, I mean, when I came, when I became chairman of Law Society because I had a lot of radical views about the judiciary. I mean, when I was practicing before, I had a very idealistic view of practice. When I came back from Cornell, I taught at this university for some time. I thought law was 1 + 1 must give you 2. So when I discovered the reality, corruption, a lot of political, I became very vocal. And I think I gave a very famous presentation in one of the lawyers' conference in Utali College, I think sometime late 1990s or early 2000, in which I said that, we need to fire all the judges in this country. We need to start, from scratch, because the judges we have in the courts were not good value for money. I mean, they were not fit for purpose. That it was a Friday. That article was splashed in the newspapers that, there's a lawyer who teaches at the university who is saying the judges should be fired because they are, they are Kanu judge or there's corruption. So the next day I had a matter before a commercial court, before Justice Tom Mbulutu. So when he saw me, he said, Ahmed, I read what you said in the newspapers on Saturday. How can you say such a thing and expect it to come to my court on Monday morning? I want you to apologize. I told him I will not apologize because, I mean, that's my view. I told the judge if he had a contrary view, let him make a presentation and, the country can discuss. So he said, until I apologize, he will not hear me. I told him that's fine. So my file was taken to another judge. I mean, it created a lot of trouble for my firm. But, there are some judges who are very understanding. I remember, I will never forget one day, I think after 2 weeks, I appeared before Justice Grinji. So even before I started, he asked the lawyer, do you expect me to treat Ahmed the way Justice Mbulutu treated him? So the lawyer was taken back. She said, no, my lord. Then he said, Ahmed, what you said, I share with you. I mean, we have a lot of issues in the courts. So he opened up his court and I was very pleasantly surprised. So that's the background of what made me chairman of Law Society. There was there was such a feeling among members of the society that we must take the judiciary head on, and they thought I represent that movement. So when I was elected, and I tell guys, I was elected. I decided to run for chairman accidentally.
It was accidental.
Yes. It's fate again, because the nomination was closing on a Friday. Then on Thursday at 4 o'clock, I called the secretary of the Law Society, George Kigoro. I told him, is there anybody who has put in his papers? Then he told me, Evans Gaturu is the one who has put in his papers. Then I said, we need someone really to challenge Evans. I said, Evans and all the school. He will not take the society where we want. So he said he's the only one. Then I called another lawyer, whom I will not mention. Then he said, Ahmed, I'm taking my paper very early in the morning, but then he told me, why don't you become my vice chair? Oh, I felt slighted.
Oh.
Yes. That he can tell me to become his vice chair. I felt it. I thought it was insulting, that so and so can ask me to be his vice chair. So I made up my mind that I will put in my nomination before midday. So I filed everything, took my papers, 10 o'clock. I was a candidate.
What?
So we ran, and I won the elections. And that time, there was this thing of tribe doesn't exist. This thing of we never used to campaign. We used to vote through the ballot, like the post office. You just vote and that.
Wow. So,
but the defining thing that happened, is that when I was elected chairman in March 2003, is when Kibaki came to power. So Kibaki came, with that big broom to clean everything. And I remember, although I was not chairman, in January, when Kibaki was sworn in, our chairman was Rachel Mamo, the Minister for Foreign Affairs. And, she was just leaving. We normally vote in December, so we know by then, how we can guess how the election was going on. So when we were in January of 2003, we called up, we had a meeting of the council. And, we said, there's a new government. Kibaki looks like he has new guys. This guy will listen to us. Why don't we be the first guys to call for the immediate resignation of the Chief Justice, Bernard Chunga? And that was something big. So Rachel was our chair. She said, over her dead body, she will never call for the resignation. She called it, she will never call for the resignation of Bernard Chunga. So we told her why. Then she said, he is my uncle.
Oh,
that's simple.
Wow.
So we told her, whether he's your uncle or not, we want call for his resignation. Let the government picks it up or not. So she said, you guys, I will not stop you. Call a press conference, but I will sit outside. So she sat out. We called a press conference and we said he should resign. And that created a buzz. Immediately after that, I think the president, appointed a tribunal for his second. But I think the hallmark of my tenure, especially the first time, was the radical surgery. When Kibaki came to power, he appointed a commission. I mean, the Chief Justice, Evans Kisheru, appointed a panel of judges headed by Ringara to investigate corruption, incompetence, and they went throughout the whole country. And they came with a report called the Ringara Report that called for 50% dismissal of the High Court judge and the Court of Appeal, and about 35% of the magistrates. So that was huge, huge. I mean, it has never happened anywhere in the world. But as chairman of Law Society, we said that, we don't just trust these guys. I appointed my own committee, I think headed by Zamba, who was a former chairman. We also prepared a huge report in which, Kenyans came out in large numbers to say that this XYZ took bribe. And that was the first cleaning of the country. 50% of judges were fired and they left, 35% of the magistrates. And for some time, there was a good judiciary we had. And then the good thing about my time, I think, is when the new judges were being appointed, I mean, the chief just called me. It was very rare that he said, I want to involve the Law Society in the recruitment of judges. I want you to go get me a list of the judges you want to recruit. And I remember I prepared a list with a good friend of mine who is a judge called Justice Kanye. And, we prepared that list, 35. Many of the judges of the High Court are people I have recommended to become judges, including the Chief Justice himself. He was in that list of 35 lawyers I recommended to become judges of the High Court. But when fate is something. And I remember when we made that list, I asked Kanye, I want more women in this list. So we put some ladies. The final number 35 was a lady, Justice Commander recommended. He said, there's this lady, why don't you put her name there? So I told him, he gave me her name, but I couldn't click. So he told me, he described it for me, the lady. So then I realized it's a lady I know. So I put her name 35 out of 35, and she became a judge.
Wow.
Yes.
Interesting. So how would you rate the current council, as it were?
The current council it reflects the chairman, I mean, Harvey is a strong character. I mean, he's very strong. He's a little bit out of the ordinary in terms of, his personality. He is strong. He has a strong views. And also what shapes also the Law Society is the general dynamics of the country. How is the country being run? I mean, if the country is run very smoothly, the chairman of Law Society and the society may have little to do. But when there's a lot of political activities in the country, the Law Society will always be part of that factual or legal matrix that's going on in the country. So Harvey is a strong man. I mean, he's running the society with a strong fist. I think many people like it. He's a man who is keeping the government on its toes. He's doing a lot of active litigation, which is very important in this country. The only thing now we should start is private. You know, during my time, we used to do private prosecution. And people used to fear it a lot. When the Law Society starts a private prosecution, whether you are a minister or an attorney general, it's a very powerful statement. So I think, although Haji is doing a good work in terms of prosecution, but there are certain people they don't touch who are involved in all kind of corruption and deals. And I think that's something Javi and his council will probably look into in the coming future.
All right.
Yes.
Let's move on to, you went on to be at the helm of the Anti-Corruption Advisory, then JSC. JSC was very interesting. What is one of the takeaways that you have from your time at the JSC? Actually,
before we go to JSC, I mean, anti-corruption was interesting also.
Yes.
Because when I became chairman of Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission, I was also chairman of Law Society. So many people thought, that it looked bad that our chairman is here and he is there. But although I was elected, I think on a 5-year term, I spent only 1 year. Yes, I resigned because when I was given the job, the main task was to recruit, the directors. We recruited Rungera and I think 4 assistants. Now there was one guy called Rotich, Dr. Rotich, who certain people claimed was connected to Moi. But I thought, when we recommended, the government said they will not appoint Rotich. They will appoint the others. So I told them, if you don't appoint Rotich, because we don't know what reasons or what factors you are taking in, I will consider that to be second guessing my board, because there's a board that recruited. You can't take 4 and leave 1. Personally, I thought it was tribal politics. Rotich was a Kalenjin from Moi's time. Kibaki's government is a new kid on the block. So I said that if you don't, so I resigned. I left because of that.
Wow.
Yes.
And the 4 years just went like that of your tenure?
Yes.
All right. JSC.
Yes, JSC, people create the impression I've been there for 20 years. I've been there only for 3 years. Yes. Because I lost my second term when I ran. But I was there for 3 years. But, when I ran for office, especially in the legal profession, you must have an agenda. You must have purpose. You don't run an office for the sake of it. When I went to become a chairman of Law Society, I had this idea that we must overhaul the judiciary, and we overhauled it. That's what, during my time, you serve one year as chairman of Law Society, and the second, then you run for election. So my first year was so eventful in terms of what we did, that when I ran for the second time, I became the first chairman in the history of Law Society that was not opposed. For re-election in his second year. So I always have an agenda. That's why I ran for office. So when I ran for JC, I think also I had an agenda. We wanted to, there was a new constitution. There was this powerful institution that appoints the courts, the judges. So I wanted to be an active participant in how to reconstitute those courts. And we recruited the Chief Justice. We recruited the judges of the Supreme Court, Court of Appeal. When we were in the JSC, Court of Appeal had no woman judge. They had 12 male judges. By the time I left, we achieved 50-50. Yes.
But there was this perception, Wakili, that during those interviews, and I know even from the media fraternity, everyone would wait until it is your turn to ask questions. You have these hard-hitting questions. Is it just, are you coming off as a bully, or just
actually,
being real that you want answers from them?
If I was now given a chance to interview someone for an office of Chief Justice or a judge of the Supreme Court, it will take 3-4 days. Yes.
3-4 days?
Yes.
Where?
Yes, because the office of Chief Justice under the 2010 Constitution is very important. It entails a lot of things. It entails to someone who will be the president of the Supreme Court. The guy who will shape the Supreme Court. It also entails someone who will be, head of the judiciary. So when you are electing that person I mean, you need to do a lot of background checkup, you know. What was he? What kind of a student? What is his background? What cases did he do? What, I mean, and then take him through his writings so that you know what is his philosophy. I mean, where will he take the judiciary? Where will he take the Supreme Court? That is where I was coming from. I mean, most of the judges who applied, if you look at, you know, the kind of questions I was asking them, I was interrogating them on their decisions to show them that they are not the right caliber to sit in the court, especially the Supreme Court. Yes. So, I mean, I wasn't harsh with them. I was just fair with them. Yes. But, you know, I mean, Kenyans are funny because, you know, there are so many apologists of the system, you know. I mean, there are so many, you know, there's so many interconnections. There are lawyers who have been connected to that power grid that were the, you know, they were more aggrieved than the judges themselves. Yes, yes.
But your critics, and I know you have had this severally before, your critics would argue you come off as very aggressive, very abrasive.
But that's what the
Some
job, I
would
mean,
say, you know, the ego is way up there. Is this a fair
no, I mean,
perception from where you sit?
You know, I mean, when you apply for a job, if you want to become Chief Justice of Kenya, I mean, it's a huge job. And I can tell you that it's not everybody who can become Chief Justice of Kenya. I mean, that, you know, it needs someone with a scholarly background, something with an impeccable history as a lawyer, someone, you know, either with impeccable track record, maybe as a judge, someone who has depth, someone who can stand up in an, I mean, it's a huge job. I mean, the same applies to a judge of the Supreme Court. It's not, you know, it's not this normal. So when I was interviewing the guys for the Supreme Court, I mean, I was looking for the creme de la creme, you know, the best lawyers in this country who can become those courts. So, I mean, when some lawyers, of course, there were many people I was dismissive of, and I think rightly in my view, there are many people who are not fit. I'm not saying that the people I selected have proved it right. Most of them have proved me wrong, that they were not right for that job. But that's something for history, you know. We learn a lot. And that's why I'm more convinced than ever before that in recruiting, you know, judges for especially the Supreme Court, I mean, we need a very thorough process. I mean, 2 hours or 1 hour interview when you ask them stupid questions, it doesn't do fair job to that office.
Any considerations from yourself on sitting on the bench?
No. I've told guys that when you participate in the formative stage of an institution, I mean, you don't go back there. People may think that you have been doing all this for yourself.
For that?
Yes. I tell guys, I will never become a judge in my life.
Ever?
Ever.
So just senior counsel and then call it quits, go into publishing because now you're into publishing?
I mean...
business more like side of life?
I don't know what I will do, but okay, I practiced law for 26 years. I've done everything that could be done. There's nothing left for me in law. But becoming a judge is not an option for me. No.
Absolutely not. What's the one or maybe 2 cases that you have handled that have you sitting down at the end of the day, patting yourself at the back and saying, that's me, I did that?
No, there are thousands of cases we have done. I mean, I tell guys I do cases for 2 considerations. One is, there are cases I do for the money.
I love the honesty.
Yes,
on the hot seat.
Yes. I don't deny. There are many cases I do for the money. When the money is good, I do it. But it's not the only consideration. But there are many cases I do because of the human fact. You know, there's a human element. I've done many cases just to show the other side. That he may have more money than my client, that he may be more powerful than my client, but we can still beat him in the court. Yes, there are many cases. I mean, there are thousands of cases we have done. Yes,
definitely. Yes. The term Grand Mullah that you're known for, where did this come from?
It came. It was actually an innocent name initially. When we were in the when we were in the JSC, you know, we used to recruit a lot of, you know, judges, magistrates. Then there's a time we went to recruit cadis. You know, the first time also. You know, cadis now became a very important part of the judiciary. So we, you know, cadis, it was very interesting to recruit cadis because, you know, the guys who are applying are guys who don't have legal background, you know. They just have maybe a degree in Islamic law from universities outside the country. So every time there's a legal issue, William Mutungo used to say, no, 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 we have a grand mullah here. So Ahmed, whatever he says, that is the law. That is how it became a grand mullah. So it was like that initially. That's how I got that title of grand mullah. But you know, later on when we had this issue of the JAC and our former secretary, the lady who became an MP, what's her name?
Gladys Boss.
Gladys Boss Cholet. Now Gladys Boss Cholet created a false impression. She went to the papers, then she spinned it. She said Ahmed is so powerful in the JAC, he runs everything, that everybody calls him Grand Mullah. So then they put, you know, they start put a headline, Grand Mullah, this man. So that's how it became.
And the name stuck.
Stuck, yes.
Speaking of Gladys Boss Cholet, it was very public. I'll call it a fallout, a public spat, as it were. How is it now? Do you talk?
No, I don't see a lot, but you see, I mean, I like the way when, I mean, you know, the dynamic, the JAC is normally a powerful institution. You know, everybody wants to control it. Everybody wants to have a say in it. When we were in the JAC, Gladys Boss Cholet she was connected to certain power grids, to very powerful people in government. And when we tried to fire her, I mean, people brought the house down on the JAC. You know, they took us to Parliament on trumped-up charges. Parliament dismissed the JAC. The president appointed a commission, you know, of low-level, you know, Jubilee functionaries. But I mean, it has come full circle. I mean, you can see where Cholet is now politically, where the president is on the other side. But I mean, we had nothing personal against her that time. I mean, she just ran, you know, a brief that was not hers. And I think history will judge both us and the JAC and her correctly. So
nothing personal?
Nothing, absolutely.
All right.
Yes.
It has been 10 years since the constitution that we're currently under. A lot of gains there, a lot of criticism there. Have we stood firm to the spirit and the letter of the constitution 10 years later?
When this constitution was promulgated in 2010, you know, Kibaki really embraced it, 100%. I mean, Kibaki was for it. You know, I mean, it was coming at the tail end of his tenure, and he wanted to leave a legacy. And I was a critic of Kibaki, but positive critic, because although he has done a lot, in my view, he could have done much better. But he did very well. And, you know, he implemented the constitution during his time. You know, I mean, he was very supportive of the JAC, of the judiciary. When we started, when we were elected a member of the JAC, the budget of the judiciary was 3 billion. Kibaki raised it to 17 billion within, you know, 2-3 years. When Uhuru came to power, every year he was president, the budget of the judiciary was being reduced. From 17, it came down to 14. For the 7 years he was president, and now it's back somewhere 15, 16. Parliament and the judiciary used to have the same budget, almost same budget, 15, 16. Now Parliament has about 30, 40 billion. Judiciary is, you know, at 13, 15. So, you know, Kibaki impressed the judiciary. Uhuru, for reasons nobody knows, I don't know. I don't know what the reasons are, but they are very short-sighted. Fought the judiciary endlessly. And that is one of the factors that led to certain aspects of the constitution being undermined. So, I mean, when it comes, for example, the judiciary, I mean, you know, a good judiciary, a robust judiciary, an expansive and powerful judiciary helps everybody. There's a famous judgment, I tell guys, you know, when Murungaru was very powerful, and he fell out of power. They wanted to arrest him. And his lawyer was Paul Mute. And Paul went to the court, and the High Court was decided not to hear him, you know. He tried everything, everything. Because the High Court judge, you know, just shut the door on his face. Then he went to the Court of Appeal, 3 judges. So the 3 judges listened to the case and they said, you know, Murungaru is being treated unfairly. We don't see the value of this, prosecution or this. So they gave a very famous judgment. They said the courts are for those who are powerful, those who are weak, and those who are powerful once upon a time. I think they were referring to Murungaru. Yes. So it's a famous judgment.
Yeah.
So the courts are always there for everybody. I mean, Uhuru is very powerful today. I mean, tomorrow he may be powerful once upon a time. So it's important to have a judiciary that protects the interest of everybody. Whether you are weak, whether you are powerful, or whether you are powerful once upon a time. So, I mean, this government, I mean, and I'm being very fair, has undermined the constitution big time. And that's one of the problems, that despite the progressive nature of our constitution, the big man or the president still proves big for the Kenyan constitution. And that's the conundrum we face. Yes.
Yeah, and he has made public pronouncements even in the past, the judiciary being the weakest link, you know, in government. Is this a fair assessment? Is the judiciary getting better? Is the game getting better? Or would you agree that the judiciary has been the weakest link between the legislature and the executive?
No, first, nobody denies the judiciary has challenges, you know. I mean, there's a lot of corruption. Nobody denies that. If you ask the Chief Justice, he will tell you that, you know, there are challenges facing the judiciary. I have said myself many times that there's a lot of corruption in certain courts. The Supreme Court I created, or I participated in creation personally, has not lived to the expectation of Kenyans. No robust jurisprudence, ethical issues. We hear all kind of gossip about them. So there's that disappointment. For example, in 2017, I mean, I was Uhuru's lawyer. I mean, I did not agree with that judgment. I knew it was wrong. And I knew it was a political game that some of the judges were playing. But, I mean, you move on. I mean, you have to, it happens. What do? You move on. But you don't keep a grudge because it has happened. If you keep grudge, nothing moves. I mean, so the judiciary has its own challenge, but it's not the weakest link, really. I mean, it performs much better than the legislature. It performs much better than even the executive. So the judiciary, with all its challenges, with a budget that's a fraction of the State House, you know, has done fairly well in the circumstance. Yes.
All right. As we wind up, you're a family man.
Yes.
How's the work-life balance for you? How do you strike that balance between this person that's, again, I'll say respectfully, tough talking, no holds barred, there on Twitter, your social media is so active, and then you go home, is that the same grand Mulla, or now just ground Vituni different?
I think ground is different. I mean, I'm a family man. I have a lovely wife and 5 kids. I have a son who just finished his second year in Georgetown University. I have 4 daughters, 1 in Hillcrest and 3 in Kenton. My last 2 daughters are twins. So I'm a man that's surrounded by a lot of love from girls. I have different relationship with my kids. I think the twins have their own dynamics. They are identical twins. Sometimes I don't know which one is which. I call one and she says, "Dad, I'm not that. I'm so and so." So it is, I'm very easygoing with them. We are like friends with my kids.
Do they see what goes on, you know, in your work life, in your professional life? Are they shocked that, who is this person?
No. I mean, like, for example, when we were doing the presidential petitions, they used to watch. When we lost the first time, you know, they were very angry. And, you know, even kids in Kenya, you know, have their own political views about this, you know, about Jubilee, about ODM. I mean, I think they follow the family's political line. So I mean, they know what happens. I mean, they read, they discuss, they know everything. So I think, I mean, in this age, you know, kids know everything. I mean, if there's a news item, they will easily pick and say, you know, Daddy, there's something this about you, or there's this.
Would you want any of your kids to follow in your footsteps?
Some of them want, some of them don't want. It's up to them. You know, my view is that it's fate. You know, I mean, I want them to decide what they want. Of course, I will want one of them to be a lawyer, but really, I will not force any one of them to become a lawyer. I mean, you know, in Kenya, the problem is when you are a lawyer, you think the only good job is being a lawyer. Or when you are a doctor, you think doctor is only. I mean, there are many jobs nowadays that are very challenging, very dynamic, very entertaining, very fulfilling. So I will leave them to chart their own course. But if any of them wants to be a lawyer, I will encourage them.
You're a sports fan. Kati ya Man U na Arsenal, or you're Liverpool like me? No, champions.
I tell guys, I mean, there's only one serious team in the English league. And I have not changed my views on that. And I think many people agree with me. I mean, you may win a league this year, but it doesn't mean much if you look at what happened in the last 20 or 30. You know, I mean, the English league, there are many guys who are buying trophies. I mean, if you put 300-400 million pounds, you will win the championship. But there are many teams like, you know, Arsenal. I mean, they have never bought a cup they have won. I mean, they just do it, you know.
So you stand by Arsenal like that?
Yes, I stand Pakamisho.
We cannot convince you to move?
Let me hear. I don't think you have any facts on your side to convince anybody.
We shall bring them. The hot seat production team. That is a homework for you. All right. So just as a final question to young lawyers and those who are very thirsty to get to levels that you are in, what would your advice be to them, especially at a time when now everyone is so down and distraught because of what is happening with the pandemic, not just in Kenya, but all around the world? No,
I tell guys, you know, I mean, law is a good profession. I mean, it's very rewarding. I mean, just because of the cases you do, the kind of case you do. I mean, there are many cases you help people in distress. I mean, many times you act for David against a Goliath. I mean, there are many times you act for a very weak person against a powerful man, and you bring him down. So it's very fulfilling. But it's also a very well-paying profession. I mean, the top lawyers in Nairobi earn as good money as a top lawyer in Wall Street. So, I mean, it pays well. It's a good profession. For young lawyers, I always tell them, you know, the profession, the future is very bright. I mean, it's not a lot of gloom and doom, you know. But it needs, you know, dedication, hard work, honesty, integrity. I mean, and fighting the system when it goes wrong. I mean, you know, guys think that, you know, like the judiciary was like this. I mean, the judiciary has been worse than what it is today. I mean, the judiciary in the 80s and 90s were closed shops, you know. I mean, they were owned by people. There's a lot of progress we have achieved. Yes. So for young lawyers, this is a good profession.
But do you think you're leading by example, especially when you talk about integrity? Like right now, we're just seeing a tweet where you're going at it with your colleague, Donald Kipkorir.
No, but I mean, Donald is a good friend of me. I mean, we're buddies. I mean, those are punting between friends. You know, those are, we joke actually. I mean.
Is it when it's on Twitter?
No, it's a joke. I mean, it is for him and me. We know our ground rules. We just, both of us get surprised when somebody who doesn't know and whom I have not addressed and he has not addressed participating in that debate. Yes, we laugh about it.
So we should not always believe what we see when we're out there on social media?
I mean, not between me and Donald. I mean, Donald is a friend. If I tell him, whatever I tell him, he takes it in good heart. Even me, I mean, he says a lot of things about me. But I know it's Donald. Yes.
So the two of you just know where you're coming from?
Yes, absolutely.
If we're looking down the road, what kind of legacy would you want to leave?
You know,
Ahmed, Nassir, Mullah, his senior counsel.
You know, legacy is not something you bother about. It's for history to judge you. Let history judge me. I'm fine by it. But I will not say that my legacy is X, Y, Z. I want to do this. No. Legacy is implementing what you promise to people when they put you in office. I mean, the only positions I've held in my life is Chairman of Law Society, the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission 1 year, and 3 years in the JSC. And people can judge me. I have no problem. If they think that, Ahmed has put his friends in positions of judge, I have no problem. If they think that, I've appointed a friend somewhere, I have no problem. But if you look at the people we appointed when I was in the JSC and the people they are appointing now, I mean, you are comparing the wrong things. Yes. I mean, I held the JSC to a very high standard. Yes.
Do you feel that you have made a mark? Do you go to bed at night feeling I have made a mark? I'm comfortable in my skin. I'm very happy with what I did. I'm very, people talk about me sometimes. I tell guys, nothing makes me happy than people misunderstanding me. Yes. That makes you happy?
That makes me happy.
Makes you go.
Because I laugh at them. Yes. When someone says crazy things about me, I laugh at them because I'm not what they think or want to believe I am. And that is, I have no apologies for anything I have done in my life. I have no regret. There is nothing I apologize. There is no regret I have in life. I mean, I'm very happy with what I do. If I'm given a chance to do those same things, I will do it a little bit more harshly than I've done.
More harshly?
Or more, or harder. But there's not, I have no regrets. Yes.
Absolutely none.
Zero.
All right, Grand Mullah, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the hot seat. No regrets whatsoever. I think that's an important philosophy as well, to have no regrets whatsoever. Stand by what you believe in, your decisions, and what you have done. So stay tuned for next week's show on the hot seat. It keeps getting better and better each Sunday. See you then.